She hit me with it right after dinner one night. My wife had been reserved all week long, and this Friday night she seemed even more so that way. I was worried about her, and actually started the conversation that caused this to happen. Honey, what's up? You've seemed upset about something for over a week now. It's nothing really. I just have been trying to figure something out. Well, you have me worried, dear. Care to enlighten me at all? Something has been bugging you. Well, I think we need a trial separation, Carl. I sat there shell-shocked. Had she hit me with a baseball bat, I would have been less surprised. A trial separation? Where the hell had that come from? A trial separation? What are you talking about? Don't yell, Carl. It's just that I feel. What? I was struggling to calm myself down. She hit me with wanting a separation, and I was supposed to take it all in stride? Jesus. What had I done to deserve this? And why now, of all times? I was completely stunned. I need to find myself, Carl. I've felt smothered for a while now, and I need some space. I need to think things through. But a trial separation? That's just one step away from divorce, Paige. Why didn't you say anything before? Did I do something wrong? What is it? It's not you, Carl. It's me. I need to figure out what I want in life. I know that sounds selfish, but I need to find clarity. You want to leave me? No. I just need time to figure things out on my own, Carl. How about marriage counseling? I'd do that for you. No, I don't need to talk to a stranger about my issues. Carl, I just need some time. 6 months, maybe? After that, I'll know what I need to do. 6 months? Where will you stay? And what about, relief? I don't think I can go 6 months without you, without intimacy. You've got a higher sex drive than me. How are we supposed to handle that? We can't go that long without seeing each other. I need to be a part of your journey, Paige. Sex won't be an issue for me, Carl. I know it'll be tough for you, but we'll manage. Maybe we can see each other once a month? Once a month? No way. Once a week, at least. Any less than that, and we'll drift apart. We need to see each other more. Carl, please understand. I don't want a divorce. I just need to figure some things out. So, no dating other people during this, right? No. No dating. We both need to stay faithful. Oh, really? How am I supposed to resist temptation, Paige? How are you going to? You always want it more than I do. This isn't about sex, Carl. I know, but sex is a big part of our relationship. Going 6 months without it, we'll both be tempted. Please reconsider. Let's try counseling. No. Paige, we're this close to reaching the goals we've set, financial security, everything we dreamed of. If this separation leads to divorce, it'll destroy the business, and it'll destroy me. I love you. I don't want to lose you. I'm sorry, Carl. I knew this would be hard, but it's been even harder than I expected. I don't want to hurt you, but I need to be alone for a while. If you insist on this, then we need to talk to a lawyer on Monday. A lawyer? Why? If we're separating, there are legal matters. Like infidelity, if either of us cheats, it should be grounds for divorce with no property rights for the guilty party. What? I'm not going to cheat, Carl. We don't need a lawyer. Yes, we do. If you're not planning to cheat, there's nothing to worry about, right? Well, no, but what if one of us slips up? Exactly, Paige. That's what scares me. Your sex drive is higher than mine, and even I'm worried about going 6 months without intimacy. Especially if we only see each other once a month. I'm not changing my mind. If you want it to be legal, we'll do that. Start Monday. Please, Paige, don't do this. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. I've already rented a place, and I'll move tomorrow. I barely slept that night. Tossing and turning, wondering how things had gone so wrong. How had I missed Paige's needs? Why hadn't I seen this coming? The next morning, it took her 15 minutes to pack and leave. She left me her new address and phone number and was gone. Alone in the house, I realized my life had taken a sharp, unexpected turn, and I had no idea where I was headed anymore. Monday was grueling. Paige was firm in her decision, and the lawyer handled the legalities. It was a hard day for me. Paige felt like a stranger. On top of it all, my business suddenly demanded more of my time than ever. Life was spiraling out of control. Paige was gone from my life that night, and I knew true loneliness for the first time in several years. Paige had her job, and I knew a few of her coworkers there, so I'd be able to keep in some kind of touch about her life that way. But other than that, I was all alone. That first month was tough. I was working harder and harder, spending more and more time at the office and less at home. I almost lived in my office. My secretary and the people I had working for me were genuinely worried for me too. They all knew that Paige had moved out on me, and they were sympathetic. Nobody could tell me why or how to fix things though. Our first date was made for a Saturday night. We met at our place, and after Paige parked her car in the driveway where she had always parked it, we went out to eat. She was quiet and would only talk about the weather or her job. She asked a few questions about my business, but other than that it was like a date from hell. The part that hit me hardest was the feeling she gave off to me. It was like I was nothing to her. Nothing at all. That hurt me too. I suppose I got a little bit angry thinking about that, and by the end of the date it was all I could do to keep snippy comments out of the conversation. I did notice that she mentioned one particular coworker several times. His name came up more than once, and she seemed to act different when mentioning him too. I knew that the guy was the owner's son and was in charge of several departments. Paige didn't work under him, but in a way he was her boss still. After all, he was the owner's son. Her talk of him sent alarm bells off in me. Could this be the reason for her sudden need to be alone? Was she thinking of cheating on me? Leaving me for this guy? I had heard he was a real player, and he had hit and scored on dozens of women. I had also heard he didn't care one little bit if they were married, engaged or single. He was a regular ladies' man, and that fact coupled with Paige's attitude so sudden caused me to have a small kernel of fear deep inside. After she left that night, having only hugged me as she got out of my car and into hers, I sat and thought about things. I knew I loved her, and I was pretty sure she still loved me. I just couldn't figure out what was going on with her now though. As I usually did when faced with a problem I couldn't get a grip on, I used my one hole card. I called my brother. My brother had started a small business in landscaping and built it into a massive operation. After a few years of running it, a larger company had come along with a very lucrative offer for his business, and he had jumped on selling out. That deal had left him well off, and with a few better placed investments, he had managed to quintuple that money too. He was now officially semi-retired at the ripe old age of 41. I got in touch with him, and we made a date to meet for lunch later that week. I was back at work on Monday putting in longer and longer hours, working for an end that I just didn't have a lot of heart for now. After all these years of hard work, what would be the purpose if Paige wasn't in my life anymore? This separation had taken my heart and twisted it up into a lump of coal. I felt my emotions becoming harder and harder to deal with, and time without my wife was beginning to wear me down. It was like she had died or something, I supposed. David, my brother, had lots of experience in life and just being. Married twice, and his second wife and him happy as can be. I had always admired him. He was the older brother that a lot of people wish they had. Lucky me, he was mine. So, how are things, Carl? Could be better, lots better. I heard about you and Paige. Is that what this is about? Yeah, sorry. Hey, don't be sorry. That's what I'm here for, man. You're my little brother, and I love you. If you hadn't turned to me, I would have been hurt. I just don't know where to start, Dave. She dumped this on me and left the next day. We have a date once a month, and we just had our first date, and it was a disaster. It was like dating, I don't know, a dead person. There was nothing there from her. Nothing at all. Like our marriage never existed or anything. Oh man. I'm so sorry. That's tough. So tell me the truth, you been out and about with someone else? No. That's part of the problem. I've done nothing wrong according to Paige. She just needs time to herself. When I suggested doing our separation legally, she was a bit upset, but agreed to it after a bit. I just don't know what's up with her. You've been working hard on your business? Not any more than usual until after she left. Now I'm living at work more than not. She having women's issues at all? Not sure. Don't think anything medically is wrong unless she's depressed or something. I suggested going in for counseling, no go. Is she? Do you think she could be seeing someone else, Carl? I just don't know, Dave. I don't think so. I'm not real positive, though. I saw no sign that she was cheating on me, that's for sure. This all happened in a week's time as far as I can tell. I'm here for you, Carl, you know that. If things get bad or worse, you make sure you call me, okay? Yeah. I'll do that, Dave. Thanks for talking to me, too. Well, it wasn't much this time, but neither of us seems to know anything about what's going on with Paige at all. Maybe I should have Brenda give her a call. I don't know if Paige will tell her what's going on, but it's worth a shot. Brenda was unable to find out a thing. Paige talked to her for several hours, but she wouldn't mention me or our marriage. That was off limits as far as Paige was concerned. I guess I shouldn't have figured that she would, since Brenda was my brother's wife and therefore part of my side of the family. Our next date was as bad as the first one. Matter of fact, I called it off early and just took her to her place, having picked her up there to begin with. She seemed a bit upset when I suddenly just drove her home, but I saw no point in prolonging my agony again. She wasn't talking to me, she was talking at me, and I couldn't stand it. 2 months of our lives gone, and nothing to show for it but a lessening of feelings for each other. I was sure that we were headed for divorce court. I tried to get her to talk to me about her feelings, and she would just turn the conversation to her job or my business, or even in one case, the goddamned weather. I was frustrated and lost. I didn't know which way to turn at all, and how to go about trying to get the Paige I had fallen in love with back to me. Depression wasn't far away from me now. I threw myself even more into my work, and my employees started to worry more and more about me. I didn't see it though. I was too caught up in Paige and what she was doing to me to see anything else. I went to Dave and Brenda's several times over the next month. Brenda was trying to make sure I was eating right and taking care of myself, while Dave was trying to help me out the best he could. We all were at a loss as to why Paige had suddenly went the way she did, and none of us could figure out what to do. In all of this, I never thought of sleeping with anyone, even a little. I was surprised when our third date night came up and realized that it had been 3 months now. I called her up, thinking that if she sounded at all like she had over our last 2 dates that I'd just call it off. I was about to give up trying, having exhausted myself with work and worry. Hey, it's Carl. You all ready for our date, Paige? Oh, hi, Carl. I'm about ready. Are you going to pick me up then? Well, should I? What do you mean? I mean, should I even bother? Our last 2 dates were obviously nothing to write home about, Paige. You seem a million miles away and you refuse to talk about us. I'm your husband, remember me? Carl, your husband? I know this has been hard, Carl. I need just a few more months, though. I have figured out some things. I just have a few more. Yeah? Well, figure out this. I can't take our separation anymore, Paige. I've about hit as low as I can go. If you're just going to pull my chain, we might as well call this all off and call it quits. I've tried to be as patient as I can, and you still won't give me as little as a clue what's up with you. I've tried everything I can. I have no other things to do, no ideas, no tricks, nothing. I want you home with me, Paige. I need you. I love you. Please come home. Not yet. I just can't. I need just a little more time. Just a few more months. Paige, in a few more months we'll be in divorce court. I can't take it anymore. It's been 3 months. And you've been wonderful giving me the space I need, Carl. I'm begging you. I need a little more time, just 3 more months, please. I'll see you next month then, if we still care at all. Goodbye, Paige. I hung up before she could respond to me. I just didn't want to hear anything she had to say at that point. I had tried to understand, but with no information or even a hint as to what was bothering her, I just couldn't figure anything out. She tried calling me back 3 times. Matter of fact, she called 3 times a day for the next 4 days, but I would see her number or her work number on the caller ID and I'd let it ring. I never answered her messages, deleting them without listening to them. Deep inside I was scared, but now an anger was developing too. I was getting angry because she just cut me out of her life without so much as a how do you do. Refusal to talk to me, just talking at me. Insisting on a separation like this was insane. If we had problems, which we indeed did now for sure, we should have been in counseling at the very least. Instead, she had chosen some obscure path to trying to find herself and leaving me out of the loop. Paige. I wish I had never moved out. My poor me attitude had pushed me into it, and now I was in danger of losing my husband. Clarifying moments come rarely to some, and I was one of those. In some stupid way, the last year had worn me down, and when I should have been talking to Carl, I had gone inside myself. Now, Carl was mad as I had ever seen him, and not talking to me at all. I had been trying to get in touch with Carl ever since that last phone call. He was shutting me out. Of course, reflecting back on it, I should have seen it coming. Our dates hadn't been anything to write home about. They weren't at all what I had envisioned in the beginning, and I was becoming certain that I had made a mistake. My friends at work were in my corner though, and they were telling me to hold firm, regardless of what Carl tried to do. After all, he was turning into the big bad wolf, wasn't he? My heart was tugging me in Carl's direction, while my head and my friends were tugging me in the other. That was part of the reason I had moved out for the separation. I needed to clear my head of the issues that were clouding my feelings and my mind. The first month on my own had been just reflecting on my life with Carl, and how things seemed to have gotten into a rut. He was working so hard on his business that he didn't have the time to spend on me. I knew that in the end his time spent on the business would become freedom for both of us. I just didn't feel that we could or would make it to those days. Our date night hadn't been anything I had hoped it would be, but I should have realized that Carl would be at a loss as to why I had felt I needed to move out, and then the underlying tension added to that mess. I found that the only things I had to talk to Carl about were my job. I hadn't been at home for a month, and Carl wasn't being very forthcoming on life without me. I had hoped that he'd be trying to bend over backwards to please me. Instead, I was facing an almost total stranger. Not only that, it was all my doing. Like his brother had done, Carl was working towards building a large business and then selling it with enough to retire on for the remaining years. I hadn't kept track of Carl's business dealings or where he was, and his comments about being so close had haunted me. Stubborn as I was, though, I ignored that little voice in my head and pushed for what I selfishly wanted. My time. My issues. My needs. Like some little schoolgirl, I had started to push Carl away. The place I worked had been keeping us all busy since the owner's son had started working there. He was growing the business by leaps and bounds, and even though he was a ladies' man, his results kept some underlying issues in his conduct from becoming too public. As far as the owner was concerned, his son could do no wrong. Matter of fact, he had been quoted as saying that Charles can walk on water, it seems. Charles had also taken a strong interest in me. His hard, chiseled looks made it hard for any girl to resist, as many had fallen under his spell could attest to. I was having a hard time remembering that I was married at times, and my sex drive had gone into the stratosphere since moving out. Matter of fact, I had started to masturbate almost nightly. Not a good combination. I had only myself to blame for that, though. At times, while in my apartment alone, I'd masturbate. At first, Carl had been the sole lover in my fantasies, but bit by bit I had started to allow Charles to fill in here and there. Before I knew it, Charles was in my fantasy life far more than Carl had been. That should have been a warning to me. You see, Carl had been my fantasy man for a long, long time. I had never been one of those people to fantasize about famous people. My issues with Carl and our marriage were not that big, looking back on it. My friends had been seeing things in our marriage from the way I talked and acted at work, and going from that, they had concluded that Carl was ignoring me. Or worse, unable to please me. That, to be fair to Carl, was not true. I had let them make me feel like I was the neglected wife, though. Charles had been doing a full court press ever since learning that I had moved out on Carl. Someone from the office had been feeding him a bunch of bull about why I had left Carl, and the feeling around there was that I was too good for Carl and he wasn't much of a man. To my shame, I never argued with those rumors, I just tried to ignore them. After all, this was between Carl and I, or so I would tell myself. It's not any of their business, let them talk and gossip all they want, it won't and can't hurt us. Our private lives had always been just that, private. Suddenly, with all the concern being shown, a few little things I had mentioned about Carl, even from when we had first dated, had all been blown out of proportion, unknown to me. Others had been whispering about Carl not being able to please me in bed, and some of the rumors had specific details on top of that. Never would I have imagined that my friends could be so harsh or callous in their judgment of my husband. Of course, in my selfishness, I had probably not painted a true or even a good picture of him either. I didn't know about most of the rumors' details, only that my closest friends were downplaying them to me constantly while feeding them to others that whole time. Some friend. As they turned out to be. Nobody in the office, with the exception of a few close friends, would ask me what Carl was like, or what our lives were like away from the office. I should have been aware that rumors have a way of coming back to haunt you, especially when one lets them simmer and doesn't take action to dismiss them when they are untrue. If I had known what was to happen, I would have acted totally different and perhaps never gone to the extremes that I had by moving out on Carl. My realization would come too late for me, of course. With Charles, who was so male, and so, well, on the surface he was every girl's dream man. Good-looking, rich, smart, and funny, I should have been more cognizant of who and what I was. I was not some young single chick that was free to play. Then, Charles talked me into that date. I knew it was a bad idea. I knew that I'd promised Carl that I would never do anything to hurt our marriage by dating some other man, for any reason. Yet I accepted the date with Charles. To be fair, though, I had the distinct feeling that to turn Charles down would be career termination where I worked. I still should have refused the date. I should have tried harder to see Carl as the man of my dreams still, and I most certainly should have not been fantasizing about anyone other than Carl, that man of my dreams. Instead, I fooled myself into thinking that Charles would be a gentleman, and that the date was just a business function of sorts, not a romantic evening. It was the first of two. On Thursday night I was invited to Dave and Brenda's again, and arriving there I found a stranger. He was talking to Dave while Brenda fixed dinner. "Hi, Carl. This is Jim. Jim Stedman. He is a private investigator that I hired." "What on earth would you need a private investigator for, Dave?" "You. I've had him tailing Paige." "Oh shit. Oh man. Do I want to hear anything you're about to tell me?" "I'm not sure, Carl. I've been watching your wife for just over a month. I will tell you that she's been alone most of that time." "Most of that time?" "Aside from her work and a couple of visitors, pretty much alone." "Visitors?" "Yes. Several of her coworkers stop by and visit her, never going inside. They stand on the front stoop and talk for a bit, then they leave. Nothing much to be worried about there. Other than who? There's one guy that took her out to lunch last Monday. He looked to be a wolf." "A wolf?" "Yeah, one of those guys that preys on a woman who's going through a rough time, manipulates her emotions, builds her up until she gives in. It's a predatory move." "Tall guy, young, wealthy, blonde hair?" "Tall, yes. Black hair, drives a BMW, always in Armani suits, seems well off. Turns out, he's the owner's son where she works, the business owner's son." "Yeah. I think I know who you're talking about." I had mentioned blonde hair, hoping he had the wrong guy, hoping it wasn't who I feared. Now, I was even more worried. If he was pursuing her, Paige might fall for it, and that could be the end of our marriage. How much was I willing to risk? Could I afford to wait it out and lose everything if he succeeded? I could try to confront the situation, push things forward, and hope Paige would come back to me, or I could wait and hope she'd resist his advances on her own. I was torn, unsure. "May I speak freely, sir?" "Go ahead, Jim. I believe your wife is trying to figure things out." If you interfere now, it could push her away for good. I've seen situations like this before, and usually I'd say step in, but this time, I think she'll find her way back. What about this guy? That's the real issue, isn't it? What do you mean? If you drive him away, you might spend your life driving others away, never trusting your wife. If you don't, and he wins her over, you'd probably divorce her, as your brother suggested. You're in a tough spot either way. But your wife, Paige, she seems genuine. Give her the space she needs. Let her resist him on her own. And if it doesn't work out and it's not too late, you can step in then. Anyone can slip. Paige has always had a strong sex drive, even more than mine. I worry she'll slip and ruin everything for us both. Normally this wouldn't be a problem because of how our relationship was, back when it was, normal for us. I get that. But I think she'll surprise you. Let her make her own decision. From what I've seen, she's one of the good ones. I'd give her some room. So she can mess everything up? No, so she can find her way out of this herself. With that, he left the report and photos with me and walked out. I owed my brother big time. Hiring someone to keep an eye on her had never crossed my mind. I never thought I'd need to. Now, I just had to trust the advice and give her the time she needed. It worried me, but I decided to wait a little longer. It wasn't going to be easy. Our next date was set for Saturday. That morning, I got an unexpected call from her. Hey Paige, still good for our date tonight? Will it end up like the last one, Carl? We didn't even have the last one, Paige. I'm sorry about that. I know. But something came up. Can we move it to tomorrow? Yeah, I guess. Are you okay? Paige, are we going to be okay? I think so, Carl. I still need a little more time, but I've made some decisions. You've been patient, and I really love you for that. I know this hasn't been easy for you. I just want you home, Paige. I'll see you tomorrow? Yeah. How about 5? 5 it is. After that call, I felt better than I had in a while. It seemed like Paige had made some decisions, and maybe the detective was right. Giving her space had helped. I showered, and after some thought, decided to go out for dinner anyway. I was tired of eating canned beans and TV dinners. The tension hit a boiling point as I stood over them, my heart pounding, fists clenched. Paige's face was pale as she looked up at me, a mix of shock and guilt in her eyes. Her date, this smug, arrogant prick, was getting up from his chair, squaring off like he had something to prove. Listen, buddy, he said with a sneer. She's made her choice, and it's not you. So why don't you back off and... I didn't even give him a chance to finish. My hand shot out, grabbing him by the collar, yanking him halfway across the table. His cocky smirk disappeared, replaced by fear. Get your hands off my wife, or I'll break them, I growled, my voice low and dangerous. Paige gasped, and in the background, I could hear Dave and Brenda standing up, calling out for me to stop. But I couldn't. I wasn't thinking clearly anymore, all I saw was red. The guy tried to shove me back, but he was no match. I pushed him hard, sending him crashing back into his chair. He stumbled, knocking over glasses, causing a scene as people around us began to stare. Paige jumped up, trying to get between us, her hands on my chest, trying to calm me down. Carl, stop! Please! She cried. This isn't helping anything. I was breathing hard, adrenaline coursing through me. Every fiber of my being screamed to finish this, to wipe that smug look off his face for good. But then I looked at Paige. Really looked at her. The fear in her eyes, the panic. She didn't want this. She didn't want any of it. I could see that now. Slowly, I let go of her date's collar, pushing him back into his chair. He sat there, rattled, but too scared to say anything else. I turned to Paige, my voice softer now, almost pleading. Is this what you want, Paige? Is this really what you want? I asked, my anger fading into something else, pain. She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't answer right away. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving the restaurant, leaving her with him. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get out, to breathe, to process what had just happened. Dave caught up to me outside, putting a hand on my shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. "Man, you did the right thing in there," he said quietly. "Let her figure it out. If she's worth it, she'll come back. If not, you're better off without her." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. All I knew was that something had changed tonight, something fundamental. Whether it was Paige's fault or mine, it didn't matter. Things would never be the same again. "You're her husband? The jerk that can't please her in bed? The mouse that can't roar? The wimp-ass guy who had her and lost her? Get lost, buddy, she's fair game now." I don't know when it started. All I know is my fist slammed into his skull hard. His head snapped back and he looked like he was about out of it as I came to a stop bent over him. Paige had jumped up and was crying, looking afraid of me. Dave was there, trying to get me back and out of the place while I shook him off. I grabbed Loverboy by his silk tie and started to slam my fist into his face again and again. The next thing I knew, the cops had shown up and I was in cuffs. Paige had disappeared and Loverboy was shouting that he was going to press charges. I was hauled off to jail while my brother told me that he'd get me a lawyer. I ended up sitting in the cell all night, with a bunch of drunks and what appeared to be drug addicts. What a way to end a day. The only thing I was missing was a buddy sitting there with me telling me what a hell of a good time we had. The next morning at my arraignment, my lawyer got me out on bail. I was in serious trouble. Loverboy was hollering that he wanted me prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I almost laughed at him since I could see that his face had been stitched up and he had lumps and bruises all over from my fists. It made me feel just a tad bit better. When I got out in front of the courthouse, Dave and Brenda were there to meet me. I had been remanded to their custody for the meantime, until the trial. I was in serious trouble after all. The lawyer was telling me all the possible consequences of my actions, and plans for my defense. I was hardly listening. I just wanted to go get slobbering drunk. Then something the lawyer told me sunk in. "What was that you said about Paige?" "I said if we can get her to testify that he was manhandling her, we could get you off scot-free. You were protecting your wife after all." "How am I supposed to do that? She disappeared last night, and I'm sure she's filing for a divorce right now. Probably right up the hallway a little ways." "No, I'm not, Carl." I turned to see Paige walking up to me. She looked troubled, but at least she was talking to me. "I don't understand. What are you doing here, Paige? I came here to get you out of jail, but it seems that I'm a little late for that. Your brother took better care of you than I have." I'm so sorry, Carl. This is all my fault." "No, it's all asshole's fault, Paige. He shouldn't have been trying to cop a feel of you in a public place like that. Are you going to divorce me now, Carl?" "Not unless that is what you want, Paige." "Why did you do that?" "What? Try to protect my wife?" "That's what good husbands do, Paige. They love and protect their wives." "But I was dating him. We had a deal, and I broke it." "Did you sleep with him, Paige?" "No. Matter of fact, I was sorry I even told him I'd go out with him. I forgot what day it was when he made the date, and when I realized that it was our date night I tried to get out of it, but he refused. I was afraid he'd cause problems, even more than what he has, so I cut my date with you in order to tell him I wasn't interested in him, that way. It got out of hand though. Maybe just a little. Our deal was sleeping with someone, Paige, not dating. I forgive you for that. I wanted today to be special, Carl. I was going to tell you that I had figured it all out and that I wanted to come home, to you, forever." "You do?" "Yes. I acted stupidly and I should have gone with you for some counseling. I listened to the wrong people. Even though they meant well, they were dead wrong about my issues. I listened to someone I hardly knew instead of my husband that I loved. I'm so sorry about all of this. Sure you want to be seen hanging around a jailbird? Oh, yeah, you were wonderful. The way you smacked him, it was wonderful. Why'd you disappear then, if I was so wonderful? Because I figured you'd file for divorce after seeing us together like that. I crossed the line with him. But you told me you two didn't sleep together. You didn't, you know, right? No, we didn't. But I agreed to a date with him when I already had one with you. There's no excuse for that. None at all. I want you home, Paige. We'll get counseling, figure out how to make things better between us. If I don't end up in jail, that is. I don't think that'll be an issue. I'm planning to press charges against him for attempted harassment, and anything else I can. I can help with that, my lawyer said, taking control. He had everything lined up, and I could tell he was determined to fix things. Dave and Brenda stood beside me, going over everything as we moved forward. He dropped the charges against me if she dropped hers against him for the restaurant incident, but she was able to keep the employee charges against him in the meantime. He had pressured her into the date, and he had also intimated that if she didn't play ball his way, she could lose her job. His dad would end up paying dearly for having his Romeo son working for him now. At home, things were difficult for a time. Our counseling opened up some things that I hadn't been aware of that I had been doing. Too much time with the business, not enough time with her, things like that. I made a change shortly after that, and it made all the difference in the world. I was offered a rather tidy sum for my business, and I sold it. Like my brother, I am now semi-retired. Paige and I are doing lots better, and our sex life is back where it used to be. We both learned a lot throughout all of this. Sometimes friends can be wrong in their advice. Sometimes one has to take a stand even if they are unsure of the outcome, and sometimes, just sometimes, things left alone do work out in the end.